Welcome to the Seniors Rock Show, presented by the Law Office of Michael Robinson, PC, on News Radio Wham 1180. The Seniors Rock Show, a lively weekly discussion shining a bright light on aging with fun, entertainment, and important info for all adults. Join in with your comments or questions. Call or text 222-1180 or 1-800-295-1180. Now from the News Radio Wham 1180 studio in downtown Rochester, here's your host, Joanna Palvino.
Welcome to the Seniors Rock Show. I am Joanna. I'm your host, and I'm here with co-host estate planning attorney Mike Robinson. And we are both looking forward to the next hour. And Pam's here too, so there's three of us actually. But we're going to be with you for the hour, and I hope you'll stay with us too. And I don't know about you, Mike, but the pre-holiday pace is picking up, and I'm feeling it today. I thought maybe we could talk a little bit about ways to de-stress on the agenda and get to the point where it's like stress less and enjoy more. That's our goal. So that'll be our, I guess, overall show theme today. And that or any other things that our friends listening might want to add or talk about, we are live, and you can reach us at 585-222-1180 or 1-800-295-1180. Pam will answer. And if you have comments or questions, please feel free to call us. And, you know, we love hearing from our listeners, so feel free to call. We sincerely mean that. And we've gotten lots of nice notes on the website lately, Mike, and we just wanted folks to know we appreciate all of you. And as we get ready for the holidays, that's important. We know gratitude is very important, in fact, and it helps us to feel thankful when we have gratitude, we feel thankful, and that feels good. And physical therapy can be a mood booster too for several reasons. And that's besides the obvious physical benefits. And our guest today is Nick Antonio from AGAPE Physical Therapy to tell us why we shouldn't wait until the new year to take care of ourselves. We do that so often, you know, the New Year's resolution thing. So I'm looking forward to that. And I'm looking forward to hearing from my co-host, Mike Robinson. So I'm going to stop talking. How are you, Mike?
Hey, Joanna. I'm very well I was going to say this morning. It's now this afternoon on a sunny Saturday.
Well, you're looking festive with that hat on. Folks, I have to tell you, because you can't see him, he's wearing a Santa hat.
It is, and it's warm.
It looks great. It matches your beard
and
your mustache and your hair. Whoops.
As long as it doesn't match my belly, right? Then I'm okay with looking like Santa. So,
What do you got for us today?
Well, you know, we're going to keep on with our series on the basics of estate planning. And in the last several installments, we've been looking at living trusts. And we've looked at how living trusts are structured, the mechanics of how they work. We've looked at the benefits a living trust provides during your lifetime. And we've looked at some of the benefits of a living trust after your death. Specifically, we've discussed the fact that a properly funded living trust keeps your estate and your family out of probate, and thereby avoiding a great deal of delays, stress, and expense. And we've also discussed how a living trust can be used to provide protection and guidance for a young person's inheritance. And so this week, we're going to take a look at how the living trust can be used to provide divorce protection over a beneficiary's inheritance. And, you know, Joanna, let's start with some statistics here when we talk about, you know, why divorce protection. Whether we want to face it or not, divorce is a fact in our society. And studies indicate that between 40 and 50% of first marriages end in divorce, 60% of second marriages end in divorce, and 73% of third marriages end in divorce. Those are huge numbers.
So much for three is the charm, right?
There you go, right? And, you know, and think about it. We all know many people who are divorced and who have children who are divorced, and we all know many divorced people who have remarried. So even though we may want to think that divorce will never happen with our children or grandchildren, these statistics tell us otherwise. And by the way, another statistic is that the fastest growing age group in terms of divorces are people over 50. So it's not just young people. It can happen
Right.
at any time. And while I'm certainly not suggesting that prospect is something that we should be worrying or stressing about, I do advise that it is prudent to plan for that possibility.
Okay, so the obvious question here is why is that? What can happen if you don't plan for a possible divorce? Because,
Sure.
like you said, you don't want to think about it, a little denial in there.
Right, right. And well, what can happen is that the inheritance that you intended for your child or your grandchild winds up in the hands of their divorcing spouse. And I could share with
Mm.
you many stories of that happening, and stories where a beneficiary had to buy out the divorcing spouse's share of a home or a cottage property or some other asset, or simply where the asset has been lost entirely. So the consequences can be severe.
Hmm. So, okay, I get that, but you can't plan to prevent someone's divorce. So, how do you plan for that possibility?
Right.
How
You
do you
you
do that?
certainly, yeah, you can't plan to prevent a divorce. And actually that reminds me of a term that we use in golf for a particular type of shot. Joanna, we call it a son-in-law.
Mm.
It's not what you were hoping for, but it'll do.
Oh, geez.
So anyway, so how you can plan for the possibility of a beneficiary's divorce is not to leave their inheritance to them outright, but instead to leave it in a trust for their benefit. And this is a special type of trust where you can allow the beneficiary to have full control over their trust and allow them to be able to use the assets in their trust for any purpose. But as long as those inherited assets remain in trust name, they are protected from a divorcing spouse. And Joanna, this isn't just theoretical. I've had several instances over the years where I've been contacted by the attorney for someone who's divorcing a client's son or daughter, and they're asking me about their trust. And in every instance, once I showed them the terms of the trust, they went away and the inheritance remained protected.
Well, that's good and it makes sense. So, why don't more people do that? Why do that kind of planning, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly does make sense. And the reason that more people don't do that type of planning is because they aren't aware that it's an option.
Ah,
When they created their estate plan, no one, explained the risk to them and no one offered them a solution for addressing that risk. And that,
mhm.
so often in estate planning, we find that that's the reason certain issues aren't addressed is either the issue was never brought to someone's attention, or even if it was, they were never provided with some way of addressing that.
Right.
Uh,
That's why it's important you go to somebody that knows what they're doing and maybe somebody who specializes in estate planning, not somebody who's doing like 10 different things.
exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. And divorce isn't the only risk to someone's inheritance. And in fact, next week we're going to look at another type of trust provision that can provide really complete asset protection over an inheritance, not only from a divorcing spouse, but from nearly any type of creditor or threat.
Uh-huh. And yeah, this stuff is so interesting. And before we did our estate plan, I had no idea how in depth these things go. Uh, and how important it is to have somebody like you, Mike, whether it's Mike or someone else that knows what they're doing to know, for someone that keeps up with the laws, keeps up with what's happening, and most important, suggest to you what you should do with your estate plan because you don't know, you just don't know, and like you said today, if they're not aware, that's not an option.
Exactly. And that's for me and for a lot of the attorneys that I know who work in the same field. What's fun for us is that we've got all these tools that are so flexible and we can apply them in so many different ways to address, people's issues. It's very creative and again, it's fun for us as planners, but ultimately the great benefit is to our clients.
It's the in the education alone. for you to make these suggestions and to remind us that some of the topics that you work with, I'm going to say it out loud, they're not things you want to think about when you die, when you're incapacitated, when you get divorced. But like you said earlier, these are all facts of life.
Exactly. And it's, you can't, and again, I wanted, because we're talking about stress today, right? So it's not a question about, I don't want you to stress over it, but just think about it. And I guess we've got a question. Is it from Sue? Is that right?
Yes.
Sue, hello.
Good afternoon. This is a little off topic of what you're talking about, but I don't know if you are aware of that, the homestead provision, which if a child of an elderly person lives with the person for at least 2 years, if that person has to go to some kind of a nursing facility, that the house is free from being taken.
Yeah,
I want to turn your radio off. Sorry, go ahead.
That's Sue. You hit the nail right on the head. You've got your facts exactly correct there, and that's something that many people aren't aware of. Is that if there is a child, and we call them a caretaker child, living in the home with someone for at least 2 years, and then that someone, the older person, does require admission to a nursing home, then yes, that home can be protected, and that's a good thing to know.
Well, here's a follow-up question. In the event that the person is in a care facility and they pass away, is there any kind of payback that they can go back and say, well, now you have to pay us back?
Not if things are structured properly. And again, certainly everybody's situation is different, but very often what we would recommend in that situation is actually conveying the house to that caretaker child prior to the nursing facility resident's death. So that's not always possible. There's other ways to go about it, but you're right. That's an important exception to the home being an available resource that people should know about.
Sue, thank you for calling
that, but
today.
I just wasn't clear about the follow-up. So you're saying that if the caretaker, the house should be placed in that person's name. I'll give you a specific. My sister's taking care of my mother. She's 85 years old, and right now things are fine. But in the eventuality that she has to go someplace, I understand that at that point in time, the facility can't lay claim to her asset of the home. But if she passes, can they say, well, now you owe us, and go back and...
So that's a great question. We do have to go to break, but what I will tell you is that there's typically going to be some way to still protect the home, but you definitely want to consult with an elder law attorney to give you advice for the very specific situation.
She can leave her information with Pam, and you could get a hold of her, Mike. How about that?
Sure.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much for calling, Sue. We're going to be right back with Nick Antonio from AGAPE Physical Therapy. Stay with us.
Nick Antonio, Doctor of Physical Therapy and Clinic Coordinator of the AGAPE Physical Therapy Chili office. Nick believes today is always the right day to start a healthy routine, and we certainly agree. Welcome to the show, Nick Antonio.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
Hi, welcome, Nick. So I guess I'll start the questions. I'm happy to have you here. And my first question is, I saw a very cute picture of your baby on Facebook, and I was wondering what the name is. I wasn't sure who that was.
Yeah, that's my son. My wife and I just had him on October 18th. His name is Cameron. So he's 8 weeks
Cameron.
old.
That's a great name. And how old is he?
8 weeks old.
8 weeks. Congratulations. Wow, that's a nice holiday gift, huh?
Yeah, we
have a little grandson that's just about that age, a little bit older. It's joyful. So congrats on that. And I guess we'll get down to business now. So let's talk about what your main topic is, and tell us now why now is a good time to start a healthy habit like physical therapy, as opposed to waiting until January or your New Year's resolution.
Yeah, so physical therapy, being insurance-based, the end of the year is a really good time for a lot of people because the insurance plan deductibles tend to be more likely to be hit at this time of year. So that could result in visits, copays, or even fully covered PT, just based on your insurance plan. Everyone has a little bit of a different plan, but PT could be a lot more affordable at the end of the year as opposed to that resetting deductible in January. Also, you don't always want to wait around for that nagging injury to resolve because that could actually result in a worsening of your conditions. And with this winter season coming around, we've been really lucky so far, but people tend to be in the house, not moving around as much, and that could definitely worsen some certain conditions. So the body definitely prefers to move, and the earlier you get on that, the better. And I know Lisa was on. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I know Lisa was on last month, and she was talking about the balance tune-ups because we've been really lucky with the weather, but we all know that our luck's going to come to an end soon, and those slippery conditions are a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, and so it does make sense to, there's no reason to wait. But, I'm sure, Nick, a lot of people are wondering, this is a busy time of year. What kind of time commitment would physical therapy require right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Most people starting off with PT begin with 2 visits a week. That's the average. Some are a little bit more, some are a little bit less. But that's determined during your evaluation process on your first visit. But regardless, there's 168 hours in a week. So if you can just commit a couple of those hours to PT per week and just a couple minutes per day on home exercises, you have the potential to resolve all those nagging aches and pains before the new year even comes. Most people
That
are
sounds reasonable. And
how
how do you start the process, Nick? We don't have a lot of time left, so I want to make sure people know how to get a hold of you and how to start that process.
Yeah, just make a phone call to any of our office. The front desk staff will get you set up an appointment. We usually can book you within a couple days, sometimes next day. And most doctors do not require a referral for PT, so you can just come in and see any of our providers.
That's right. And you've got, I think, 7 locations. So thank you so much, Nick, for joining us today. And folks, we'll be right back after the news.
Everywhere you go, take a look at the 5 and 10. It's glistening once again.
Oh, you're listening to nice holiday music here, and you're also listening to Seniors Rock Radio. I'm Joanna, your host, and I'm here with co-host estate planning attorney Mike Robinson. Holidays are great and they bring lots of joy, but they can also trigger tough emotional conflicts and anxiety. And today, Mike and I thought we'd share some tips on how to maintain some peace within yourself when you're stressed out or you're anxious around the holidays. So, Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, so very often stress results from us feeling pressured by other people's expectations, right? And that can be especially acute at this time of year because everyone expects you to be happy and jolly because it's the holidays. So of course you should be happy and jolly. It's the most wonderful time of the year.
Mhm.
And yet you might not be feeling that way at all. Maybe it's your first holiday season without your spouse whom you lost this year, or your mom or your dad or a child or
Yeah.
some other loved one, and you're not feeling happy and jolly. You're just feeling downright sad.
Mhm.
Or maybe you're dealing with some financial difficulties. That's stressful enough. And then on top of that, you feel pressure that you've got to be buying gifts for people, and it can't be just any gift. It's got to be the right gift, or you're busy at work. And the last thing you want to think about is coming home and making sure your home is spotless and perfectly
Mhm.
decorated and cooking that big meal. So
You're stressing me out talking to her like that.
I know, right? Right. So a couple of thoughts come to mind for me as I was thinking about this. And, first, if you are sad or you're just not feeling that so-called holiday spirit, that's okay. You feel how you feel, and you're not obligated to feel the way someone else thinks you should feel.
Yeah.
And number 2, if you're someone who is feeling happy and jolly, that's wonderful, but recognize that maybe not everyone is, and that it's okay if they're not, and don't put that expectation and that pressure on them.
Absolutely. I love this because, you've mentioned this before in different situations, but somebody made these things up. So stop pressuring yourself. There's no universal laws that say you have to put tinsel on the tree. There's nothing that says you have to pick gifts that are specific for a person. And that, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to admit it. I have a problem with that because I think I have to be very specific about the person and get something special. But it seems today that it's changed a lot and people, are requesting things like gift cards or, uh, I hear what they want instead of me being able to do it. And I struggle with that. I don't know if I'm crazy or what. Pam, do you feel that way?
Yeah, I think, this time of year can be tough for a lot of people because we do put a lot of pressure on ourselves to, get the right gifts or, getting all the decorations up in your house within a certain amount of time and everything has to be perfect. And, for me, I think what I try to do is all of that stuff is great, but it can put a lot of unnecessary stress and pressure on people. And I think just trying to have something fun to look forward to that's seasonal that can kind of get you more in the holiday spirit, have a little bit more fun with it and just remember what it's all about. And that stuff doesn't really matter at the end of the day. So that is kind of what keeps me going and makes me get back into the holiday spirit, so to speak,
I like that. And you know what else?
Absolutely.
I think we get caught up too in the old, like for me, we used to have traditions that are no longer around. People have gone, people have spread out around the world and we just don't do the same things that, like we used to when we were younger. We don't do the caroling in the house and all that. We just don't. So that alone, sometimes puts pressure on me because I think, oh, we should be doing these things, but we've moved on and it's okay to move on and to change. I guess I want to say that. Also wanted to mention anxiety can show itself in many ways. So I wanted to talk about a few of those. Mike, want to go with the first one?
Yeah, sure. And I think we talked about this with Dr. Petrescu last week, that you might perceive something as threatening even when it isn't. Or you go to great lengths to avoid uncomfortable situations. And, so those are some ways that anxiety can manifest itself.
Yep. Or maybe you overthink the plans or you spend a lot of time creating solutions to worst case scenarios when they probably or most likely won't even happen.
Right. Yeah. I've read so many quotes along the lines of, worrying, you're ruining the present for something that may not even happen in the future.
So true. And we just get caught up in it. And we have so many responsibilities in this modern, world that we live in that I think that those things just happen. And
Exactly.
yeah. And you might feel indecisive and fear about making the wrong decision too. I mean, just that alone. And think of all the choices we have. I mean, you go into a store today or even online, crazy, there's even more choices. So sometimes I think people are pressured, oh, am I getting the best deal? Am I getting the best product? It's so many choices.
Exactly. And, the decision is the decision. You can't be perfect all the time. And the other thing that oftentimes happens, and we can probably all relate to this, is, you find yourself feeling restless. You're kind of keyed up. You can't quite relax. There's a lot of ways anxiety shows up.
Yep. Like in the middle of the night when I wake up thinking about, checking off things on my list, crazy, silly things that could have definitely waited till the next day.
Sure. And, as far as I'm aware, there's no blood test for anxiety, but
No.
you can pay attention to how you're feeling. And if you feel that, if it may be something severe enough, you should check with your doctor, especially if you are experiencing some unusual physical symptoms. So, certainly be aware of that.
Mhm. And, there's some basic things, some lifestyle changes that could take the edge off too, like a well-balanced diet, for example.
Yep. Getting adequate rest. Boy, sleep is so important.
And above all, we're going to say this as often as we can, exercise, keep moving can help us manage anxiety better. So one research study actually, Mike, showed that regular vigorous workouts, and it doesn't matter what you're doing, you can just be walking, reduce the likelihood of developing an anxiety disorder over the next 5 years by 25%. That's a
Wow.
big number.
That's yeah. And those are, again, just a few things that can help when we're in these busy times. But again, always okay to look for some professional help when you need it.
Yeah, and don't forget that. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I want to make sure that people get that 988 number too, the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, Mike. If you really, really stressed and you really feel you need help and you don't have someone to turn to, or even if you just want to talk to someone anonymously, 988. Don't forget that number and share it with your family.
Very important. Thank you. And folks, keep listening. We'll be right back with more on Seniors Rock Radio on News Radio Wham 1180. And welcome back to Seniors Rock Radio. And Joanna, another show is just about come and gone.
Why do you always tell us that at the end of the show?
I know. Well, because it's true.
And you have
I
a Santa
always
hat on,
speak
so it
truth.
must be
You
true.
know that.
Oh, it's true. And we're Sagittarian, so we are optimistic, lovers of freedom, hilarious, fair-minded, honest, and intellectual.
Indeed. Indeed.
3 out of 4 ain't bad.
There you go. And what's the other one? The best conversationalists in the Zodiac?
That's right. Spontaneous and fun. That's what we are. And we have a birthday coming up. So, but we don't like to, focus on age, of course, but it is fun to remember our birthdays and that we are Sagittarians, like many people in our family. We were chatting on the break here, right, Mike?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I've got two children who are born this month. One with a wedding anniversary this month. My folks' wedding anniversary is this month, so it's a busy time of year.
Yeah. And your other Grateful Dead fan, my brother Jeff out in San Diego, him, his wife, and his 3 sons, all Sages. Thank you.
Very good.
It's contagious. But anyway, it's a great time of the year. And what have you been doing? What are your preps for the traditions?
So we've been, and this kind of ties into what we've been talking about. Kelly and I, made an overt decision this year to not really do a lot.
Okay.
And really just try to slow things down. As you mentioned earlier, a lot of our traditions have sort of come and gone. The kids are all grown and out on their own. And, my mom passed away earlier this year, so some of the things that would involve her, we certainly remember her, but we're just not doing all of the same things that we used to. But we still do the Christmas cookies and some of the traditional Italian foods on Christmas time. That we continue with that tradition.
Do you do the fishes?
We don't do the 7 fishes. I mean, talk about labor intensive. That's
smell. Excuse me.
Yeah, so we don't do that, but but we certainly do some. We do. I like to do the linguine on Christmas Eve, and we'll have calamari salad and some of that sort of thing.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
And so today we're putting our tree up. I'm excited about that. Are you going to do a tree?
We are not. That's one of the things we talked about. We decided no tree this year.
Yeah. Well, you know what? This is what I like because, as we said earlier, there's no law. There's no one going to come into your house and arrest you if you don't do a tree. And taking the pressure off is so worth it. And I'm kind of getting into now mixing the old tradition with the new. So if there's new things to do, why not? Right. So, for example, that Rock Holiday Village is going on this week.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's free. And I was looking at pictures online this morning, and it's all lit up, and there's ice skaters, and it looks so much fun. And I don't know where you used to skate, but we used to skate at Cobbs Hill Park. We called it Lake Riley.
Sure, it is Lake Riley. Yeah.
Same name, right? Is that the music already?
It is indeed. So we are at the end of the show. So, hey, everybody, thank you so much for listening. I hope you found our conversations helpful. Have a great week. De-stress, be well, and be kind.
Yeah, say it, Mike. And you know what, folks? I think you should, if I could talk, celebrate every day, not just the holidays. Why? Because you're worth it. And because, say it with me, Seniors Rock.